Well, welcome. Thank you so much for coming and joining us here today. I know we all have really busy lives and busy schedules, and I don't take it for granted when you choose to spend your valuable time here. And because of that, I always try and bring you really interesting content that's going to uplevel your life. And today is no exception. Today, we've got the pleasure of chatting with Lora Cheadle, and we're going to be talking about betrayal, but as a negotiation with identity, with worth, and self-belonging. And I posit to you, what if betrayal wasn't the end of your story, but maybe the moment that you got to consciously negotiate what you become? And that's what we're going to be chatting about today. The conversation is going to be about betrayal, but not in the way that we usually talk about it. We're exploring betrayal as a moment that maybe fractures identity, challenges our self-worth, but forces that internal negotiation about who we are and, more importantly, who we're willing to become next. And my guest, Lora, brings a rare blend of legal, psychological, somatic, and spiritual insights to the conversation. So we got all the angles covered for you and a really deeply human understanding of what it takes to move from, perhaps shame or self-blame into presence, into power and self-belonging. So welcome, Laura. I can't wait to dig in.
Oh, thank you. That was an excellent introduction, very well framed, and I can't wait to dig in either.
Absolutely. And for those of you who may not know Laura, Laura is an author. She is a TEDx speaker. She's a burnout and betrayal recovery expert. And she helps people navigate the threshold space after life-changing events. And with a background in law, so that obviously appealed to me, but also trauma-informed healing, she bridges the practical and the intuitive to help people separate what happened from who they are. And as I say, to consciously choose who they become next. So let's dig in, Laura. You talk about, you describe betrayal as a moment that ruptures our identity and not just those relationships. So what actually, breaks is perhaps the wrong word, but it feels like sometimes like it breaks inside us when a betrayal occurs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does feel like a breaking. We all live lives where we think we know what's going to happen. We think that we know if I do good, I'll be rewarded. If I'm good or kind or try really hard, good things will happen. And we have this narrative in our head about the way things should be.
Yeah.
And to some extent, we all have that. And yes, we talk about often the superficial things like, well, you can't count on that.
Yeah.
But we still have some really big things that we count on in our lives. We expect people that we love and trust to have our back. We expect companies maybe that we have worked hard for, that we have sacrificed for, to also have our back.
Yeah.
And then when that moment of betrayal, whether it's infidelity, whether it's corporate, whether it's something else happens, it causes us to question the basic foundations, the basic assumptions of who we are and what we are worth. And it completely disrupts the past as well as the present,
Yes.
as well as the future. And that's what makes it so catastrophic.
That's interesting about the past. I haven't thought about that, but as you said that, I'm thinking of my own experiences. And you go back and look, whether it's a friendship or an employment situation or a romantic relationship, and you sort of refilter everything, right? It's like this about
Yeah.
everything you thought you knew or even felt in those relationships. That's a really interesting perspective. So,
Yes, and usually the thoughts that come in were, I was being played. How
yeah,
was I so stupid? Why was I that naive?
yeah,
And we internalize all of that as things that we did wrong
yeah,
instead of looking sometimes at the bigger questions
yeah,
like, wow, what did they do wrong?
yeah.
What was wrong with them instead of, what did I miss? Why didn't
Yeah.
I know?
Yes, we do internalize. And it's a different world now. I think, and again, as you were saying that, I was thinking of, certainly for our parents or more even our grandparents, like the expectation was you got a job, you kept a job, you worked your 25 years, you got the watch, you retired, and there was that reciprocal loyalty, right? And those days are sadly gone, and
Right.
even in relationships, divorce rates now are staggeringly higher than they were for certainly our grandparents' generation. So, and why do you feel like, because technically, I mean, they're just events, right? That happen when something happens, but moments like betrayal, they feel so defining. So, and why is
Yeah.
that, do you think?
They do, and they feel so defining because it interrupts the narrative,
Yeah,
because it makes us feel like we got it wrong,
yeah,
that we didn't understand. And when a human, any human in any circumstance, feels like they got it wrong, it ups the ante.
yeah,
It makes you feel shame. It makes you feel guilt. It makes you feel foolish. It makes you feel all of those things that are not good things to
yeah,
feel. And when you feel like that, again, you start internalizing then, and it breaks the narrative.
yeah,
And whenever it breaks the narrative, we're left with a choice. Do I move forward, and how do I move forward? Or do I continue telling the story of, oh
yeah.
my gosh, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. I was totally overlooked for this. I was considered high potential and then I was let go. And it's really hard sometimes to break out of the story and to make the decision that, you know what, this was a moment in time.
Yeah.
It is not, in fact, my identity.
Yeah.
It's a moment in time. It's a thing that happened. What can I gather from this experience? And how can I consciously choose to rebuild myself, to rewrite my identity, and to create a new future?
Nice. And where do you think that like when you talk about that identity, and you're so right, because it does, it speaks to, and not only our identity, but interestingly, we always frame that identity, as you say, that unworthiness, right? Somehow that
Yes.
self-blame, that it's our fault. And where do you think that reflex comes from, that unworthiness jump?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad that you asked that. I think it comes from two different places. First of all, it's an attempt to control. It's a very scary place to sit in when you can say, I have no control. I have no control over what anybody else says or does. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
So when we say it's my fault, the subtext of that is so I can control it, so I can prevent it from happening again. I can do better next time.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first place. It's our desperate attempt to control the situation, which makes complete sense because how scary is it to say, wow, you know, things happen and I have no control.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to think of it not as a verdict, right? I think that's what I hear you saying. Like this is an event, it is not a verdict on you. And
Right.
what happens internally when someone turns it, when you're speaking about that identity piece? Like how does that then show up in our choices, our self-talk, our for future relationships?
Oh, yeah, exactly. When it's a verdict, it is like saying, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And when you are something, then you start thinking differently about yourself. You start presenting yourself differently and you start making different choices. I mean, think about this on, the positive end. Once I passed the bar exam, I was a licensed attorney. That changes the way I talk. That changes the way I present myself. That changes the jobs that I apply for. I'm not going to apply to be a physician when I'm a licensed attorney.
Yeah.
It's it changes the way you behave. So similarly, if I decide I am a betrayed partner, I am a betrayed wife,
Yeah.
I present myself differently.
Yeah.
If I have been fired from a job where I feel like I've sold my soul there and worked my fingers to the bone for the last 30 years, then I am unworthy and I'm not going to apply for a new job. So it changes the way we think and feel about ourselves, which then changes the decisions that we make going forward.
I love that. And I know you speak about people, performing sort of a false identity after a betrayal. And can you explain for our listeners, like, what does that performance look like in real life?
Yes. And it can look a multitude of ways, but it's not being who you are. So if I have experienced a horrific betrayal, I was let go after so many years at this company, blah, 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 whatever it is, then I can overperform how good I am, how smart I am, how stupid they are, how they didn't see. And then I can put on this grandiose false front, which is really just protecting my pain. Or on the flip side, I can start performing life as the victim.
Yeah.
I'm always overlooked. I was overlooked when I was in the fourth grade. I was overlooked at my first job. In fact, my family, they overlooked me and my friends. And then you start wearing the identity of victim,
Yeah.
or you start wearing the identity of some grandiose narcissistic person, when in fact, what you are is human,
Yeah.
and you've been hurt and you've been disappointed. When you're not performing, you set yourself free to be. I am hurt. I'm
Yeah.
disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm unsure of the future. I have to figure things out. Right now, I'm in that in between space.
And what happens when we shift from that performance to, let's call it presence, right? Where
Yes.
you say you go from trying to prove whether as the victim or the overcompensator to just simply being.
That's where you can truly figure things out. That's where you can figure your next step. I like to liken it to using GPS. We all talk about where we want to go. We all talk about the destination. But if the destination is going to, say, Los Angeles, you have to also put in where you are at. If you're in New York, it's going to be a very different journey than if you're in Washington State. And it's going to be a very different journey if you're in Europe. You need to know where you are in order to determine your next steps.
Yeah, nice. And as you were saying that about where you are, it made me think about cultural narratives around as well around, and not just romantic, but betrayals generally, and it can make them either presumably easier or harder to heal. So, how can people renegotiate their relationship with those external pressures, right? That conditioning, those cultural conditioning or whatever, rather than internalizing them?
Yeah. And you're right. It's both. We have the internal narrative and we have that external narrative, whether it's cultural, societal, gender. We all play those gender roles. The first step in that is really getting clear about what it is that you want. Sometimes being able to say, this is what I want, and it's the same thing that my culture, my gender is expected of me.
Yeah.
Or this is what I want and this is different. So then, after you have identified what it is that you want, the next step is learning how to advocate on behalf of yourself and your desires in a way that is respectful both to you and to the other people.
I love that. And let's speak about that advocating for yourself, and I think women in particular tend to be less conditioned to do this. So what does some of that self-advocating look like?
Yeah. The first thing is creating somatic safety. And that is just that felt sense of safety. Until you are comfortable, until you are in presence, until you can create that sense of safety for yourself, I never recommend advocating on behalf of yourself because it's not going to go well. And what that looks like is taking deep breaths sometimes,
Yeah.
surveying the scene, checking out and making sure your environment is safe, asking the person that you want to have this conversation with if now is a good time, and preparing them for the conversation. I would like to speak about something that is deeply important and impactful to me that may not be that comfortable for you. Is this a conversation you're willing to have? Yes or no? And then, would Thursday at 3 o'clock be a good time? Yes or no?
Yeah. I want to really put a pin in that for our listeners. We often don't approach negotiations in our personal lives the way that we would, or even in our professional lives, like with our employers, the way that we would if we were in a boardroom setting when we think of business deals or whatever. So that's a great piece of advice. Like have that negotiation with yourself first, right? Get some clarity around who do I want to show up as, right? Where would I feel most comfortable having this discussion? Prepare any difficult conversation. Frankly, this is applies for betrayal, as Laura's so beautifully sharing with us, but I would take that a step further, and for any potentially difficult conversation you're going to have, show up with more intention. Prepare for it, right? Put in a little preparation, makes a big difference. So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know a lot of your work centers on reclaiming self-belonging, right? So, can you talk to us a bit about that? Like, what does that mean in practice?
Yes. And, going back to what you said earlier, that sometimes women are not as adept or as
Yeah.
comfortable negotiating for themselves, that is also true with self belonging, with having your own back. We have been culturally conditioned to take care of others, to manage other people's emotions, to make sure everybody's feeling okay and doing okay. And what self belonging really is, it's not like selfishly putting yourself first. That's not it at all. But it's filling yourself up with yourself, knowing who you are, knowing how you feel, knowing what you need, knowing what you want. It is self full, not selfish. And when you are full of yourself in the positive way, then you become present to this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what I think, this is where I am being dismissed. This is where I'm feeling the need to please, to conform, or to perform, and that's not who I am. So it allows us to step back, reintegrate into who we are, and then live life from that place of presence.
Powerful. I love that. What a great soundbite that is. I know you speak about betrayal as information, right? Rather than identity. So, that struck me when I saw that. Like, what kind of information should people be listening for?
I want to speak carefully around this because sometimes it can be misinterpreted. It is never your fault that a person or a situation or a company has betrayed you.
Yeah.
It is never your fault. And with that as the backdrop, what did this teach you about yourself? Where might you have boundaries that are more permeable than you realized? Yeah. Where might you not be showing up or speaking up for yourself as much as you could be? Yeah. It's information about where maybe am I being too naive and not protecting myself. Yeah. Again, without blame, without shame, what can I learn from this situation?
Yeah. I love that. And as you're saying that, if I'm looking very thoughtful, I'm thinking because you can think about even in your friend relationships, how you have certain patterns that you fall into, right? That don't necessarily
Yes.
serve you. So seeing it as information, I like that reframing a lot, Laura, actually, because it takes the sting out of it. It seems less judgy. This is just information that we're analyzing, right? I'm not beating myself up. I'm just exploring the information so that it'll serve me better going forward. I like that.
Yes. And also in that inquiry, when you're making that inquiry, it is possible also that it can be a complete anomaly.
Yeah.
You can look at that information and say, wow, I really don't know where this came from and I really don't understand it. And that's valid too.
Yeah.
But 9.5 times out of 10, there's very useful information there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great reframe. I love it. And maybe for someone, well, for someone listening here today who feels caught in the aftermath of the betrayal, and maybe they're feeling unsure about who they are right now, what would be the first internal negotiation you would recommend that they have? And it may be something you've already said.
Oh no, no, I think that first internal negotiation is allowing yourself to feel. Because there's so much pressure to get back on the horse, make something beautiful and meaningful of this. And that first negotiation is to let yourself grieve, to let yourself feel miserable, to feel like a victim because you have been victimized. You just don't have to stay the victim, but allow yourself the chance to grieve, to heal, to cry, to rage, to feel whatever it is that you're feeling because we're human. And yes, at the end of the day, we can make something from this. But right now, if you need a day off, a week off, a month off, just let yourself feel.
I love that. That's powerful. Yeah. And we don't do that enough, right? We go into immediate reactive mode, or we feel like you got to chin up, buck up, put on the face, as you say, perform, whatever that looks like. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And how do we consciously choose, who we become next instead of letting the pain decide? So I hear you, like, allow yourself to be human, allow that grief. And then when we're ready, how do we choose, with maybe more intention, as we were talking about earlier, who we want to become rather than just coming from that place of pain and letting that decide for us?
Right. It's multidimensional. It's one of those things where you do need to let that grief flow. You do need to look at the information that you have gotten. And then you also need to future cast. Yeah. Where do I want to be because of this? Yeah. Where do I want to be in spite of this? How did I let myself disconnect from who I was along the way? Something I hear all the time is people are like, this isn't who I was. It's just that life got busy and all of a sudden I found myself here.
Yeah.
Go back to choosing your major in college. Go back to some of those dreams you had as a young person. Reconnect to your reasons why. Reconnect to all of those and then start figuring out, you know what? This is a huge gift. How am I going to rebuild based on who I am now
Yeah.
or who I let go of along the way?
Oh, and you know what I really love about what you just said? Fabulous for betrayal. And for our listeners, I would invite you all to do that now, regardless, even if you believe, if you're in a really healthy relationship or a really healthy workplace, because we do sometimes, don't we, Laura? We get so caught up in a particular mode that we forget our dreams and our passions, and we become maybe complacent, and we don't show up as the best, most powerful version of ourselves, the most passionate version of ourselves. So I love that advice
Yeah.
for all of us.
Because, because here's another question for your listeners. What really brings you joy?
Yeah.
When you really stop and think about that, people are like, and then they'll be like, oh, I love working out, or I love,
Uh,
and then when you push, do you really love that? Is that, and then people are like, oh gosh, I don't even know what I do. I don't
yeah.
even know why I do it.
Yeah.
And I've lost track. Do you
Yeah.
really like to read? Do you really like to walk in nature? Start there.
Yeah.
What fills you up?
Yeah. Yeah. And don't necessarily wait until the betrayal. Why do we wait until something happens like that before we decide to, I won't even say reinvent ourselves, but be true to ourselves, right? Show up as
Yes.
our true self. I love that. Now, we
Yeah.
talked about what's sort of the first negotiation for internal negotiation for our listeners. What would you say is one of the most powerful negotiations that you think every person facing a betrayal needs to have with themselves?
Oh, there's so much. I feel like one of the most powerful things that we can do is to truly decide who we are and to emanate who we are, because I think that's the piece that gets lost. So often we've got that headspace decision or that headspace discussion or that headspace view of this is who I am and this is what I'm worth, but then we don't show up as that person.
Yeah.
And so often people don't even know what that means. What does it mean to show up differently? I don't know what that means. And to me, how I describe that is giving what you want, emanating what you want. If you want integrity, if you want peace, if you want whatever it is, how do I emanate that field around me? How do I give it to those around me? Because when you start really doing that, you realize all of the different ways you're out of alignment with yourself.
Yes.
You know, if I say I want peace of mind more than anything else, am I helping other people create peace of mind? Whoa, no. I'm leaving
That
them confused.
resonated. Oh my gosh, did that ever resonate? And it's so true because even when we, and in the legal profession in particular, you're always looking for what's wrong, right? Like what's the
Yes.
other person trying to screw you, and the expectation, and part of the job, most lawyers see it as, protecting against everything bad that could possibly happen. But when we expect the worst of you, and this was a lesson that was a game changer for me, that recognition that when we are expecting the worst of people and we show up with that energy, people live up to what we're expecting. So I love that. And thank you for that reminder that, the energy that we are putting out is what we're likely to receive back. I think that's a
Hmm.
beautiful lesson. So, I normally like to end by asking what's one of the greatest mindsets that you've had? And it doesn't have to be about this issue we're talking about, it doesn't have to be about betrayal. Just one of those aha moments for you, Laura, where you thought about things differently.
My biggest aha moment, and it did come after my most significant betrayal, but it's similar to what we've been talking about, but it's that I get to define myself. Other people don't get to define me. If they judge me or view me a certain way for the choices that I made, that's really truly on them. And I am the only one that gets to define myself. And it really hit me how often I would change my behavior or my thoughts about myself based on what other people said or did. And that was my bad. That was on me. And it's up to me to define myself.
That is a game changer. And it's funny, well, not funny, I've been having this conversation with one of my boys recently a lot because I feel like get his entire sense of self is based on external sort of feedback as opposed to just being able to have that confidence internally, right? You get to define, as you say, who you are and how you show up. And I didn't ask you about any personal. Are you comfortable sharing, Laura, maybe a betrayal from your life,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
what you learned
Absolutely.
from it?
Yeah, I will share two betrayals, one personal and one professional. My professional one, and I speak about this in my TEDx. When I was a new attorney, I won the first case that I ever tried. And
Congrats.
instead of congratulating me, the judge called me into his chamber and said, "How dare you show up opposing counsel like that? Don't you know who he is?"
No.
Oh, yes. And then it got worse. And then he said, "Also, you have really nice legs. If
Oh
I
my,
were you, I would wear pants because this is very distracting." Ooh,
wow.
ooh,
What the
what?
hell? Yes. Oh my God.
And yes, that was in the early 90s. And yet still,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. So that was a huge professional betrayal for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then personally, yes, after 23 years of marriage, that I thought was a very good, very solid marriage, I found out my husband had been cheating on me for multiple years with multiple partners. And I was completely blindsided by that.
Yeah. Which makes, and what would you say were the biggest, like, well, with the one with the judge, what did you do or what changed for you from that experience? And the same with the situation with your personal life.
Yeah, with the judge, I let his interpretation of me shut me down. I thought I'm not cut out for litigation. I
Yeah.
thought I was,
Yeah.
but clearly I'm not doing this right. Even though I won, I
I
thought
was
I
thinking
wasn't
that
doing it
exactly.
right. So that's when I went in house. I stopped litigation and I went in house because I could hide. So I did that incorrectly,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I learned from it.
Yeah, well, you learn from that, absolutely.
Oh, I did learn from
And,
that. Yeah.
and we've all done it incorrectly at least once, most of us many, many times.
Exactly. And then with my husband, I did that one right. And spoiler alert, we are still together. It's
Wow.
taken multiple years
Yeah.
of repair and a lot of work, which is a whole other story, but we are still together. And what I learned about that one is it's not about me.
Yeah.
I've learned that I get to choose who I am. I get to choose how I feel. And I can also have strength and compassion for another person's
Yeah.
quote unquote mistakes.
Yeah.
He had a severe trauma background, has complex PTSD, that his affairs were about managing his complex PTSD and his trauma. They weren't about me.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, what a great perspective shift. And I want to let that sit for our listeners. Take a moment to let that settle because we often, if not always, assume when somebody we make it, it's about us. It's a betrayal of us, to us, because of us. It's our issue. And often it is not. It's the other person's baggage or trauma and disconnected sometimes from who we are. So thank you for sharing that. And where can our listeners learn more about you, Laura, and what you do?
LoraCheadle.com. And Laura is Lora, a slightly different spelling, Cheadle, CHEADLE.com. And if they are struggling through a betrayal, betrayalrecoveryguide.com, you can download a free guide.
That's awesome. And you've got a book out, right?
I do. I've got two.
Tell us about
My
it.
It's not burnout, it's betrayal. 5 Tools to Fuel Up and Thrive is my book about negotiating those external type of betrayals. What to say, how to show up differently, and what to do to navigate that internally. And my book, Flaunt, Drop Your Cover and Reveal Your Smart, Sexy, and Spiritual Self is about that internal negotiation and how to figure out what labels, roles, and scripts you want to embody and which ones you are done with.
Lovely, great title. And for our listeners, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes, all of that information. And as always, I encourage you, go ask your local bookstore as well. A lot of independent bookstores are struggling out there. You can get those books on Amazon. And you do a favor, I think, to not only to Laura, but also to the independent bookstore and also other people then, just by raising awareness in your own community that these resources are out there. So I invite you to do that. And Laura, thank you so much. This conversation is such a powerful reminder that our most important negotiations aren't always with other people. They're with ourselves about our identity, our worth, those stories we tell ourselves after life cracks us open. So thank you for bringing clarity and compassion and depth to the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, for understanding, and for holding space for such delicate work.
Yeah, no, it was a beautiful messaging, and for our listeners, you got double your bang for your buck because both Laura and I speak very quickly, so you got a lot more content in a shorter pack of time. But thank you as always for sharing this space with us. And if this episode resonated, please subscribe if you haven't done that, but also share it with someone in your life who may need the reminder that they're not alone. And some of the golden nuggets that we got here today, give the gift of sharing that by sharing this episode. And if you're ready to deepen your own negotiation power, rooted in empathy, curiosity, and courage, come find me at artoffemininenegotiation.com. And until next time, lead with heart, listen deeply, and renegotiate those stories that no longer serve you. Until next time, take care.